Over 4,000 kilometres northeast of New Zealand, you'll find the Paradise Islands of French Polynesia. But what on earth is this place? Why is it French, and what is life like there? So before we learn about these marvellous islands, let's learn a bit about its history. So in 1521, a Portuguese explorer became the first European to visit the island chain. In 1767, a British explorer arrived on the islands, claiming it for King George III. In the 1770s, no other than James Cook visited the islands, establishing relationships with the local inhabitants. In 1842, the islands became under protection of the French, marking the beginning of the French influence of the region. In 1880, French Polynesia was annexed by the French and officially became a French colony. After World War II, French Polynesia was reclassified as an overseas territory of France, granting it a greater degree of autonomy. And finally, in 2013, the French government rejected its bid for independence. So now that we understand the history of these islands, let's take a look at its people and demographics. So French Polynesia has a population today of around 276,000. Now can you guess what the official languages are? It is of course French and Tahitian. French is spoken by around 3/4 of the population, with 20% speaking Tahitian and the final few percentage speaking a variety of different languages. A fun fact about the Tahitian language is that there are only 13 letters. It has the same vowels as the Latin alphabet, that's A, E, I, O, U, but only 8 consonants, F, H, M, N, P, R, T and V. The ethnic makeup of the island is around 80% Polynesian, 12% Chinese, and the rest being from European or French descent. Around 85% of the population are Christians. The life expectancy here is 78.4 years, which would rank them the 44th highest in the world. Their life expectancy is around 4 years shorter than that of France's. The fertility rate is 1.8, which is the same as mainland France. This isn't the lowest in the world, but it's just short of the 2.1 replacement rate, which is required to ensure a stable population. Now, French Polynesia's population looks like it's actually peaked, as since 2020, its population has incrementally decreased. 2021 actually saw French Polynesia's highest ever amount of deaths, mainly due to the pandemic. So as mentioned earlier in the video, French Polynesia is an overseas territory of France. It is located deep in the South Pacific Ocean, around 4,000 kilometers northeast of New Zealand and about the same distance south of Hawaii. It is extremely remote. The closest other civilization is the Cook Islands, some 1,200 kilometers west. The closest country is Samoa, which is 2,500 kilometers also to the west. French Polynesia comprises of around 121 islands, stretching for a total land area of just over 4,000 kilometers squared. Slightly larger than Cape Verde, but smaller than Trinidad and Tobago. These 121 islands are broken up into 5 island groups, with the Society Islands being the most populated. Within the Society Islands group, you will find the capital of Papeete, which is found on the island of Tahiti. Its population is around 26,000, about 10% of the territory's total population. Mount Orohina is the defining feature of the region. It is an extinct volcano and the tallest point on Tahiti, standing over 2,200 meters tall, about a quarter of the height of Mount Everest. French Polynesia's geography is what makes it world famous. It is perhaps one of the most picturesque, beautiful places on Earth. Getting to French Polynesia for most people around the world is long and expensive, as you'd imagine. If you live in Paris, you might need to fly to Amsterdam, then to Los Angeles, then to the international airport of Tahiti. A journey of over 34 hours and costing around $2,600 US, and that's for economy. As the crow flies, this distance from Paris to Tahiti is nearly 16,000 kilometers. Of course, if you're from Hawaii, Australia, or New Zealand, this journey is significantly easier. Well, actually, perhaps not Australia. The distance from Perth to Tahiti is over 9,000 kilometers. Bora Bora is perhaps one of French Polynesia's most famous islands. It is, in my opinion, perhaps the single most beautiful place on the planet. The island sits just northwest of Tahiti. Fun fact, as there is no letter B in the Tahitian language, Bora Bora is actually pronounced Pora Pora, which translates to firstborn. Whilst we're on the subject of words, the word tattoo also comes from the Tahitian word tatau. So there's no doubt that French Polynesia is beyond stunning, right? Well, guess what the French did in 1971 to one of their own atolls? Yep, they dropped a nuclear bomb. The bomb had a yield of 440 kilotons, around 30 times more powerful than the one dropped on Nagasaki by the Americans. The nuclear test site is still heavily contaminated. So this is what the French Polynesian flag looks like. There is a canoe with sails riding some waves into the sun. This represents how the Polynesians depend upon the ocean for their livelihood. The defence of the region is the responsibility of the French armed forces. Some 900 military personnel are deployed in the territory. Now imagine being in the French military and receiving an email or phone call to say that you're being deployed overseas to French Polynesia, all expenses paid. Doesn't sound too bad, right? So what do you think the official currency of French Polynesia is? Is it euros, perhaps US dollars? Well, it is actually the CFP franc. CFP stands for Central Pacific franc. $1 is equivalent to around 110. US dollars, Aussie dollars and euros are used here too. As French Polynesia is so remote, some imported goods that aren't native to the island are extremely expensive. Fruit and vegetables like oranges and lettuce can be double the price of what it is in Paris, which is already mad expensive. French Polynesia is also a honeymoon and luxurious holiday destination where only those with a decent amount of dollar can afford to visit, meaning the islands are generally very expensive. So French Polynesia has a very respectable GDP of around $6 billion US dollars, ranking it as the 165th largest economy in the world. Its economy is larger than its neighbours, Fiji, whose population is around 3 times greater. This gives the people of French Polynesia a GDP per capita of around 20,000 US dollars, which honestly isn't too bad. This is higher than many European nations such as Hungary, Croatia and Poland. Their tourism-dominated service sector accounts for around 85% of the total economy. Tourism employs around 1/5 of all French Polynesians. The US is French Polynesia's biggest trading partner, both for imports and exports. France comes in a close second for both. At over half of all export revenue, pearls are French Polynesia's biggest export produce, with places like Japan and Hong Kong being the largest buyers. There are 53 airports in French Polynesia, 46 of them are paved. Far International Airport is the only international airport in French Polynesia. It is also the busiest, with over 1.2 million passengers arriving each year. Each island has its own airport that serves flights to other islands. Air Tahiti is the main airline that flies across the islands. The tallest building in French Polynesia is the Tahiti LDS Temple, whose maximum height is just 20 meters, which still wouldn't rank it as having the world's smallest, tallest building for a country, as there are 5 countries whose tallest buildings are smaller than this. Coincidentally, they are all also Pacific nations. At 110 meters, its longest bridge is actually a concrete dam that connects 2 halves of the village of Matiava. The islands have road networks that enable transportation with and between the islands. The main islands have well-developed road systems, while smaller islands may have more limited infrastructure. French Polynesia has a reliable supply of electricity with power plants on each major island. Access to clean water is also well maintained, with desalination plants and reservoirs ensuring a sufficient water supply. So even though this is a very remote island nation, it appears their infrastructure is of very high standard. So there we have it, French Polynesia explained. Now, if you got the chance to visit, would you? I know without a shadow of doubt that I certainly would. So thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, feel free to drop a like.